Raghu, just to check, my audio is fine, right?
Loud and clear, my friend.
Live. Talk to you later.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for having us, BTC Media and the Bitcoin Magazine. Hello from India. I think the representation here is essentially a lot of people who are actually working on Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related technologies. I will go around the room for quickly to just get everybody's introductions in. But essentially, you will find neobank founders, exchange founders, and crypto payment gateway founders who are all doing some cutting-edge work out of India. And we could get into the general panel discussion here is to give the audience an idea about the retail and the financial institution environment in India towards BTC, the startup and investor perspective towards Bitcoin and crypto companies, and the developer ecosystem, which India is so famed for at the moment. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Prashanth, Bala. Prashanth, why don't you give us a quick intro to who you are and what you do, and how did BTC start for you?
All right. Hey, thanks for the small introduction. So hey guys, my name is Prashanth. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called LastBit, and we're building a Lightning-based end-to-end payment stack that's basically meant to get as many people onto Bitcoin and Lightning as possible, and existing Bitcoin users to basically start trying to use crypto as a currency or using Bitcoin to do things in the real world by means of virtual debit cards. So my journey started quite a while back, around 2015 or 16, when I was completing my bachelor's thesis, and had the great opportunity to move to Europe. And one of the hardest things in my life was basically trying to move funds from my Indian bank to a European bank as a student. And I also had a chance to to travel around Europe. And during this time, even though I was an early adopter of Bitcoin, I could really do nothing with it. So this is a problem that I was really, really fond of solving, and being able to actually work with some blockchain startups during that time basically made me want to take the extreme step.
Nice. So is that roundabout when BTC started for you as well? Like, was that your first exposure to Bitcoin, or were you already acquainted with it?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's actually a funny story. So I was checking out grad school options, and I had a chance. So I did end up going to grad school at ETH Zurich, and so I flew to Zurich to basically see what it was going to be like. And I ran into this blockchain startup at the time. So they were just pitching at a random entrepreneur event, and so I ended up working for them for a while. And since they were in the crypto valley building a crypto payments product at the time, I had first-hand exposure to work on that technology itself. And that's when after I made my first Bitcoin transaction per se, it was no looking back.
Nice. I love your T-shirt, by the way. Darshan, my friend, give us a quick introduction to who you are, what you do, and how did the Bitcoin journey start for you?
Great. So I'm Darshan, founder and CEO of BankOfHodlers, where we started off as a platform where users can borrow and lend with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well. We started off with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we've continued to go down the market cap order. We intend to curtail the credit product till the top 10 tokens. I started off joining a fund in Mumbai in India, which is a capital. I got to do asset-backed credit for real estate, and I got a first-hand experience how banking was broken. It was engineered to favor the top 1% at the cost of the 99%. And I knew I didn't want any part of that finance world. I was a 22-year-old and idealist at the time. I moved out of Mumbai, worked in a startup for a while, and that's when I stumbled across the Bitcoin white paper, and it felt like a genuine 0 to 1. And I saw how it would automatically fit in and replace everything we know while delivering the user experience that we've come to expect. So this was late 2016. I bought my first Bitcoin then, and I noticed there was a huge gap between what was promised and real world implementation, especially in India, which is why we ended up starting BankOfHodlers. We want to bridge that.
Got it. So Darshan, for anyone who's interested, do check out BankOfHodlers. The next person that I want to introduce you to, Kumar, I think you've been around the Indian crypto ecosystem and as well as a lot of the conferences in the world since 2017, late 2016 even. So why don't you give us an introduction for how your journey started in this space and what you're doing with Cashaa?
So hello everyone. Thank you for having, and I know you have especially thanks to Bitcoin Magazine to creating a dedicated panel for the Indian crypto community, especially after because we have an open market here. We had a great win here, so let's cheers for that.
Finally.
And thanks Raghu to organizing this. Yeah, so my journey in Bitcoin started in 2013. I was in Italy during those days. I was working for Ferrari, building navigation system, and I get in touch with few people who were holding Bitcoins. No wonder why they owned Ferrari also that time. So no, that shows that the progress, the entire progressive nature. But anyway, they tried to explain me, but because I was working for an organization which was very heavily, kind of centralized system, and does not promote anything which they don't understand. So I did had a conflicting idea. I also thought it's kind of maybe a scam, Ponzi scheme, or every word. So all those narrative which is not there anymore. But then in 2014, I quit Ferrari, and I get encountered because someone approached me to build a Bitcoin ATM for an Italian company. And I started working on that project, but because it was more technical project, I had to go through the Bitcoin white paper, and that's where my enlightenment with the Bitcoin happened. I delivered that project. Now it's part of one of the biggest ATM group in the world, the same technology. Then in 2015, I started into a project. Darshan Prashanth just mentioned that how difficult it was to move money around the world. And that was the entire, because I was going to different conferences in 2015, and I was hearing this narrative that how Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies can change the world. And every time I hear this narrative, I used to imagine that last mile people on the street, or people like us, Prashanth, Gaurav, Hemanth, everyone, like the regular people, how exactly it is helping. And I couldn't find answer for that. So I started a peer-to-peer cash transfer company, because those days Bitcoin narrative was very against money movement companies, like charging that you can move money with Bitcoin, millions of dollars, and I think you can cross border. I met Andreas those days, and he was talking about that, how you can move money around. So Andreas' speeches motivated me a lot in 2015. So I started a company called BTC to Bid, and it was matching Bitcoiners who were interested to sell Bitcoin across the globe. And the end result was that it was used to move cash transfer from one country to another. So for example, if someone wanted to buy Bitcoin in India, because in 2015, you had a great premium, people miss those premium these days, but you had like 8%, 10%, 12% premium. And the problem in Indian space, especially Gaurav, I think Gaurav, Satvik, and all those who were in early days, they knew how much it's struggle they had to receive Bitcoin here in India. It was very difficult to have them to serve their customers. And that's what we started doing. So if someone wanted to sell Bitcoin in London, and if someone wanted to buy Bitcoin in India, we used to match them. And this entire system was powered by the people, the last mile people who want to send money from London to India. And we moved roughly around 20 million pounds in few days, few weeks to few months. Wow. And that's where, but when the demonetization happens, hits in India in 2017, that business was completely gone, because there was no cash left in the country. People were standing at the ATM lines to get cash, and there was no cash. So obviously and that's where we decided to move to Cashaa, because by that 2017, the problem in the industry was not anymore having liquidity problem, but the banking became the biggest problem. The biggest of the Bitcoin companies, they didn't have a bank account. Still today, I think 90% of the crypto exchanges, they don't have fiat pair, they don't have bank accounts. If you are involved in Bitcoin across any part of the world, your journey to get a bank account becomes extremely difficult. And that's where we started Cashaa to start solving this problem.
That's a serious problem to solve, Kumar, and thank you for that context to how you got here. You did mention Satvik briefly. We have someone who worked with him very, very closely through good times and bad. Hemanth.
Hemanth and Sharan, actually, not just from me.
I was going to get to that, but let's start with Hemanth first. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Hi everyone. This is Hemanth.
Sorry, just for context, Satvik, who Kumar mentioned, is the founder of Unocoin, and Hemanth will kind of give you context as to how he's related here.
Sure. Thanks, Raghu. Yeah, this is Hemanth, CEO, co-founder of Pontus. We want to bring DeFi for everyone. So we want to bridge the centralized exchanges and the DeFi protocols and act like a bridge so that the exchanges can offer DeFi capabilities to their customers, basically a DeFi as a service. We are a very early stage startup and we are just starting off. And my encounter with Bitcoin, I think probably back in 2013, Raghu, I think I was flabbergasted when I saw a friend of mine who actually used a card which looked like a credit card and used it in a coffee shop, but it was not issued by any bank. And then he explained me how this works. And it was not, I think it was also a friend of Satvik, not Satvik himself. But yeah, I was like, wow, this is something completely new. And I started reading a bit more about it. And that was in 2013. And in 2016, I was part of Unocoin in a very big way. I was a CIO there. And my journey with Unocoin started in 2016 and went on till 2019 until I decided to pursue this idea that currently pursuing. Yeah, if you ask me what made me pursue this, I think the idea it represented. I think most of us would agree the kind of what Bitcoin, or rather what crypto represents in general, the freedom at multiple levels. So that's what I'm here for.
Nice, Hemanth. So another Unocoin alum, Sharan, who's also a mover and shaker in the Indian crypto space. Sharan, quick introduction. How did BTC start for you, and what do you do right now?
Hi everyone. So first of all, Raghu, thank you for having me on the panel.
My pleasure.
So currently, I head business for two companies. One is CoinSwitch, the other is CruxPay. CoinSwitch is a cryptocurrency exchange aggregator. We aggregate some of the largest global exchanges, and users can come and buy over 100 plus currencies through us without having to create an account in any of these exchanges. The other company that I work for is called CruxPay, which is also run by the same team that runs CoinSwitch. We basically are a decentralized blockchain naming service, pretty much like Ethereum naming service, and a payment protocol. And if I have to really talk about how I got into cryptocurrencies, to be very honest, even on day one of my job, I did not understand what the white paper was all about. And I don't have a very enlightenment moment or a moment like that where I was like, okay, this is game changer and this is what I have to be. To be very honest, I started in crypto back in 2014, straight out of college, a kid who needed a replacement. So a company come by, seen something interesting, I just joined in. Even when I joined in, I really didn't understand what I was getting into, right? But when I did get into it, and I tried reading the white paper, trust me, I didn't understand anything. But what I did understand eventually was that because I started reading a lot about it, I started understanding how people in different countries where the economy is not stable, where the government isn't as cool as how we have it in most parts of the world, how they were using cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin specifically, as a savior to kind of do not devalue their existing wealth. And that kind of gave me a human attachment to cryptocurrencies. Like it's some sort of a way for people. It's like an insurance. You see, if any point of time something goes wrong, it's a trump card that you play to get out of the system, right? So for me, that was my introduction to cryptocurrency. Started all the way back in 2014.
Got it. And finally, Kumar, Gaurav, if you could give us a brief intro about what you've been doing with BitBns and how we can then we can get into the serious set of questions as well. You're on mute, Gaurav. Yeah.
So the journey for me around Bitcoin started in 2012. This was final year at college, and we all were kind of already had jobs and everything in place. So like, what do we do? And also, we kind of planned we'll probably go for an international trip, and we will figure out how to make money for going to that trip. And that's when there was a fairly meteoric rise that was happening in Bitcoin. And
Right.
at that point in time, we figured out we can probably try mining it on a computer. So we ordered stuff from Amazon US. We ordered all those things from, assembled the PC, and then started mining on it. We could mine a few satoshis, and after that, it didn't work out. The rest of the time, the computer was used for playing FIFA, and we kind of frankly forgot about Bitcoin for the rest of it. And then my second brush came about for Bitcoin in 2017 when everything was kind of going up. I so one of my juniors was starting an exchange called Coinex. He sent me an early invite. I signed up on Coinex. I loved the experience and all. And then I was kind of trying to sign up on a few other exchanges, and my KYC was pending for like about 45 days. And this one has like I need to kind of do something around it. So the idea was more of that will create more like an arbitrage bot, which would automate transactions on different exchanges using Chrome extensions. So even the withdrawal process would be automated. But at that point in time, Indian exchanges only had Bitcoin. Some were app only, where say someone like a Zepay and all only had an app interface, and more so were acting more like brokerages than exchange. So that's when we decided we will need to kind of probably set an example, start try launching an exchange. And that's when BitBns came into being, and BitBns is Bitcoin buy and sell. So predominantly Bitcoin has been the focus, and since then have seen a fairly tumultuous ride. Most of us in the industry have seen that, and now things are looking positive for the last couple of months, and hopefully they kind of stay course and things get better in India.
Sure. So with that, I think now the context is laid for all the panelists here, where they come from and what they stand for with respect to BTC in India. So my first question is towards the retail and the institutional side of things. And this is specifically aimed at the exchanges guys here and people who've worked at exchanges before. Others feel free to chip in as well. But essentially, who are the kind of users who are coming to Bitcoin right now in India? And what are the things that are driving them towards purchasing a Bitcoin or holding it or things like that? So just to because you guys are probably the gateway for most of the people to kind of come into the space, and it would be good to understand what these personas are that is driving people towards BTC, and how do they use it? Is it predominantly for trading? Is it for holding? Do they look at it as a store of value? Or do they look at it as a way to increase wealth as an instrument of trading? That these sort of perspectives would be useful. So Hemanth, we'll start with you, and then we move to Sharan, who's Sharan and Gaurav, who are currently running an exchange at the moment. So Hemanth, for you, this was what, 2013, 2015, right up to 2016. What were the kind of people coming into BTC, at least now to Unocoin?
So at least with my experience, what I can say is I think there is a wide spectrum of demographics, right? I have seen as people who are like a teenagers, as long as they can produce a legal document for KYC till the age of probably 60, 65 plus. We have seen all kinds of customers, right? And there is absolutely no age restriction. If you look at the mindset with which they come to the exchanges, especially like Unocoin or Unocoin like exchanges, is basically so there are two things widely. I might be wrong here, and it's not a generic sweeping statement, but what I have observed is there are quite a lot of people who just hold in the long run of this will appreciate 100 times, 200 times, or 50 times, whatever it is, and I want to just hold it. And there is a relatively small percentage of people who trade a lot, and they trade so much that the volume supersede the amount of the volumes of the holders themselves. So you can see the diametrically opposite kind of a demographics in terms of how they see this entire trading versus holding kind of a scenario. And that was true with Unocoin. And there are people who also have seen a lot of people who also spend Bitcoin for the daily stuff, to pay bills, to pay bills, and also as simple as paying your gas bill, paying your electricity bill. And certain people are quite opposite to that, and it might look stupid for them, because why are you using your Bitcoin to pay bills, right? So there are like a varied set of people with varied options, but that's how it stands. And demographics is a very, very mixed demographic, and you find all kinds of people in the entire spectrum.
But if you were to talk about majorities, right? Like, so would you say majority hodlers and majority young millennial teenagers? These are I mean, late teenagers and early 20s kind of guys. Would you say that that's a fair representation?
I think it's a fair representation. Hodlers is what you see in that age group. For trading, I think you need a little bit more of an insight, a little bit of more of a research. And for that, I think probably 20, late 20s, late 30s would be the right demographic. At least that's the kind of analytics that we had in Unocoin. We very small set of people for trading, but they do a lot of trading because they have that insight. And there are a lot of people, lot of people who hold. Yeah.
Got it. Gaurav, as you're running BitBns even now, and going by what he's saying about more hodlers than traders and products like Bit Droplet that you've been launching recently, does that trend still hold true? And are there any differences to what Hemanth said?
Yes, the demographics is 78% of them are in between 20 to 32 age group, predominantly male. So 80% plus of the audience is male. Or some of them are using their wife's KYC or girlfriend's KYC. So actually, from the KYC rate, 80% of them are male. Other than that, also on BitBns, we see this sort of statistics. But on BitDroplet, we are seeing a lot more evolved user set. So yesterday itself, at night, 2 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m., I signed up a person who was 66 years old. He is an ex-alumni IIT Bombay, new into a group and all, and he got interested. And I never thought that someone of that age group could get interested into Bitcoin and would kind of actively invest. So usually it's very hard to change opinions after a certain age group and all.
Yeah.
He was earlier fairly pessimistic in terms of Bitcoin and all, and I had a 2-hour long call. He asked me for a lot of links and everything. I shared. He saw all of them. He kept asking questions, and after a few days, he was like, "Okay, this makes sense. I would definitely want to kind of try it out," and that's how it started. So, as a whole, from the investing sort of a behavior or holding sort of a behavior, I think that sort of demographic is there where the wide spectrum kind of comes in. With respect to trading, we've seen it's more 20 to 32 sort. And in fact, 80% of our users have never traded equities. So that's also a very interesting.
That's a really interesting point. So are you telling me that the overlap between traditional asset traders and BTC traders are actually very uncorrelated?
Right. So that's very low. And frankly, a lot of them don't enjoy those markets because one, they're time dependent. So you need to kind of have it only for 5 days between 9 to 3:30 and all. The second is there are a lot of restrictions. So like if you open a say Zerodha account, you'll get automatically logged out after the end of the day. Your orders get cancelled. All those things kind of happen. Because of all of them, and people have kind of seen a much larger volatility with Bitcoin. So volatility is usually good for a trader. So for them, BTC kind of works out well. And some of the products that we have, like margin trading, where we give across leverage and all, those kind of become fairly interesting. And in the traditional markets, there are usually restrictions with respect to, one is on the margin side, the second is with respect to the lot size, how much value you can trade and all. So those sort of restrictions are not there in crypto, and that precisely kind of brings a lot of them into crypto. And the second is on the SIP side, which is a Bitcoin only sort of a product where people can invest into it. We're seeing that a lot of them are kind of keen. And on the holding side, I think Darshan would also have some good insights because they have been running BankOfHodlers where it would be more of the trading class would not be going there for sure. I can be sure on that because the traders don't want to lock any of their funds per se. They want to use as much funds that they can to kind of manage their risk and all. But the holding class is typically 8 to 10 times larger than the trading class in any context, and more passive. Those are few insights around it.
Got it. Those are interesting insights, and it seems like not a lot has changed. Sharan, as you are launching an India-facing exchange, under the CoinSwitch banner. Do you see that this is, do you factor in these insights as you're going with respect to user growth right now? And also do share some insights on what the user demographics was in with respect to what you were running in CoinSwitch, the aggregator as well.
So if you just specifically look at CoinSwitch, because it's an anonymous instant exchange, which is non-custodial, so the kind of user base that we had was pretty matured, right? A bunch of people who knew how to hold their cryptocurrencies, a bunch of people who kind of really knew the in and out of what they were doing. But considering the fact that I've also worked with Unocoin for quite some time, from 2014, I generally break the investor group something like pre-bull run of 2017 and post-bull run of 2017. Now, if you look at the kind of investors that came in on the pre-bull run of 2017, it was just picking up, ridiculous, to be honest. Because a lot of people did not understand what they were getting into it. Everybody just wanted to make quick money. Most people were buying crypto so they could invest in ICOs, not because they were buying Bitcoin for it, because Bitcoin, Ethereum was the only currencies they were taking to get into ICOs and stuff like that. A lot of people were just speculative, absolutely speculative, right? And I was really worried, to be honest, because if the quality of investors don't go up, then we are all in trouble. But that's not the scene that happened after the bull run, like the whole, the so-called media bubble collapsed. Right. The kind of people who came in were more fundamental about what they wanted to do with the cryptocurrencies. They kind of had an idea about what they wanted and all of this stuff. Now, like as you mentioned, we were trying to launch an Indian exchange, so we did a kind of a thorough research on the user base and the kind of people they wanted to get into. And I agree with, and I have the same opinion as many of these guys on this panel, that we are seeing a young demographic coming. Right. There are a couple of things here. Why? Most people, I have a degree in finance as well. Most people do not understand stocks, including me, right? I don't understand what a PE ratio is and things like that. I could, for all you know, invest in stock and things like yes, bank can happen, right? Like right from my childhood, I've been told banks are the most stable things, but we are seeing that not to be the case as of now. With crypto, I think the young demographic is coming in because they kind of understand it. It's a line of code. A lot of people can look into it and understand how it is not dependent on the mumbo jumbo of a bunch of people to play around and things like that. The other thing that I also feel is that we would start seeing a lot of young people come into the crypto part, because now if you look, a lot of youngsters who are just starting off the job, the only investment they do is tax-free, right? So all of the money is actually going into ELSS fund right now. Now with the new tax bracket coming in, the new tax regime coming in, wherein you necessarily do not have to invest into a ELSS fund, a lot of those money might free up and then start entering into crypto.
Got it.
Right.
So clearly, it's a young audience that's coming to BTC, and usually after post 2017 bull run, it is essentially to hold and more towards the fundamentals of the token, fundamentals of the asset, rather than just a speculative type thing. This is where I want to bring Darshan and Kumar into the discussion. You guys predominantly interface with banks at the moment, and other financial institutions as well. How easy or difficult has it been? Can you kind of walk us through the journey since the RBI ban that happened in India right up to now? Like, what are the trials and tribulations that you've faced, and what is the situation now for a crypto BTC company that interfaces with the real world? And of course, the exchanges would have a perspective on this as well, but you two specifically, because you're far more, you kind of portray yourself as a neobank more than a crypto exchange, and having your perspective on this would be good. So Darshan, if you could start, and then we could come to Kumar as well.
Sure. So right off the bat, most people in the banking ecosystem didn't even know that the Supreme Court verdict overturned the RBI ban. So couple conversations around breaking that level of friction where they are saying, hey, isn't this not allowed by the RBI? Couple of conversations there. But 2 weeks in, or maybe 5 weeks in, they're still a little more receptive to it. Some banks and some fintechs have given us the go-ahead for different products that we could potentially integrate. A classic example of a really nice product and even Unocoin, I think, integrated in 2017, was a virtual account product that, even though the RBI ban was lifted, most exchanges don't have access to that as of today because the banks haven't opened that up or the fintechs haven't opened that up. And again, that's just a very small example. Something as simple as opening a bank account is definitely opened up for us, and I'm sure that's the case for other exchanges as well. But anything beyond that has additional levels of scrutiny by their legal team, where they're the reception has been a lot more open from other jurisdictions, primarily the UK, Singapore, and even Hong Kong for that matter. They're a lot easier to correspond with, and as long as you are following their guidelines from the regulatory and the banking standpoint, they're very happy to work with you. So India, on the other hand, is the banking ecosystem is not as well informed, but hopefully that shouldn't be the case moving forward. Because we traditionally have a very, very strong tech stack in India compared to most jurisdictions.
Right. We will get to the tech side of things in a bit. But Kumar, your thoughts on this? I think you circumvented the problem through working in the UK, but do give us some insight on how it is being working with the Indian institutions and how open they are in working with companies like you.
So Raghu, I think this question is made mostly not primarily, pointed to us, but to the exchanges, because the banks creates more problem. Not just opening a bank account in any jurisdiction is very easy. Like also for us, it's not a problem opening just a bank account. The problem happens once you move after whatever threshold level which they have. So moment if exchange A's goes to UK, Singapore, Europe, anywhere, just open a bank account. You just get a bank account, but moment your frequency starts going up, the questions comes. And that's primarily not because of the crypto or non-crypto, it's because of the general AML and KYC and mostly primarily the AML policies which banks around the globe have. So your business need to justify why these volumes are coming and how this is justified. And when it comes to Bitcoin, then things start getting more muddy. And that's where the banks shut you down. So it's not, I don't see India having any major problem when it comes to this. Obviously, it's like currently in Europe, more than 60% Bitcoin companies are currently banking with us. So when it comes to we are one of the largest banking group in Europe, giving bank accounts to almost every second or maybe 3 out of 2 companies. So what we have seen during when we onboard them, that most of the founders, they does not understand compliance. They don't understand the money laundering policies. And that makes us really nervous to deal with most of the crypto companies. And obviously we have to do, being me as a company, also a Bitcoin evangelist, obviously I had to promote and push. And that's why we started creating different products which can help them to understand these compliance. Talking about Cashaa, we started building the banking products even before RBI, the Supreme Court decision was made. So if you go to some of our announcements, we did the announcement during early November's, because it was very clear that how, one of the benefit which we have as a company or as a group is that we have seen these wave cycles, this chicken and egg, and this different problems where regulators keep coming to crypto companies, be it UK. UK had the similar problem in 2014-15. US had similar problem in 2012-13. Russia had the same problem, I think 15-16, where they started talking about putting people in jail if you are dealing in Bitcoins. So I don't see Indian ecosystem is any different than global ecosystem. It's exactly just going with, its only difference is it's going with its own pace. Obviously, regulators need to have more and more information. And the more comfortable they become, I think the more friendly they will be. As of today, we are now planning also to launch a banking group in India to mostly solve this problem. In fact, we are already working with most of the exchanges in India. They are already our customers, and we are providing them huge liquidity. So the last question which you had, who are the actual users? feel that exchanges in India even have 25% of the actual user who are actually holding Bitcoin in India. I think less than 20%. Because as a liquidity group provider, we provide every day at least 600 to 1,000 Bitcoin in Indian market.
Right.
And if you combine the volume of all the exchanges in India, that barely goes to 200. And it's 24-hour buy and sell liquidity. It's not just the supply. So you see, that's the. So if the Indian exchanges really want to bring and grow more, they have to now go out and break some of the very stereotype data which I think they hold, that only young people deal in Bitcoins. I think for India that's not true. The most of the Bitcoin is actually going in India between the age group of 35 to 50-year-old, not before 35-year-old, because India is mostly the young generation, the young population in India is actually working in IT infrastructure, a lot of new age services, and the money. So one of the things is that if you see the curve, the Indian young population is now started to making money, right? And when you start to making money, you don't go and you just buy. First thing you do, you go and buy Bitcoin as a human. No, you don't do that. Most of the population doesn't do that. You go, you get a nice girlfriend, you get a nice car, you try to show off. Let's be practical. That's what the majority of human beings does. And now coming to Indians love show off, right? We are Asians. We like to do that. Okay, we like to show. Obviously, it's not applicable to everyone. You have 5-10% obviously people who understand about future and they go. And I think those are the users who are going to actually to these India, to exchanges in India. But most of the money, if you see in India, is not actually held by the age group which is below 35. Actual money is held by our parents, right? Those who had properties, because India made a lot of money when it comes to property booms, right? Like my father makes more money and he turns more money, like double, 2x, 3x, 4x than Bitcoin in India. So if you really see the chart, how the people make money on lands, you will feel shame that, yeah, really Bitcoin makes money? No, actually Bitcoin does not make money for them. And that's why they don't come. And those who understood it, they are definitely trying to have a balance. The problem
that does actually make a lot of sense. The age group that you just spoke about has a lot more disposable income to invest into crypto than what the exchanges are looking. That's actually a really interesting discussion point.
I can actually back that up. Even the demographic on our platform, be it from India and even outside, when we look at strictly BTC volumes, it's not, even though now you can look at it as total number of users and BTC volumes that they tend to hold and they tend to move. Even though there might be a majority number of signups in that age group, they don't really hold the capital. The people who hold the capital are not even 35. Like these are 40, maybe between 40 to 47 in that age group. They want to fully KYC and they're happy leaving their capital as long as it makes financial sense for them. And these are people, again, who hold 50, 60 Bitcoin minimum.
Got it.
Now, the problem with and the problem, Raghu, which you have with these age group in India, obviously in UK, in Singapore and US, obviously these people are a little bit more tech savvy than Indians. Now, when you come to India, this as Darshan mentioned, let's put 40 to 50-year-old age group, or let's say put even 40 to 60 actually when it comes to India, because this is a really wealthy group which you have in India. Between 45 to 60-year-old. The problem with them is that they are not tech savvy. Like, for example, my father bought Bitcoin 4 months ago. And the only reason he bought it, because finally my brother said, okay, give me money and I'm going to buy for you. So he needed a physical point of contact to really get his first Bitcoin. So you see, that's what is something which is missing in India right now, a touch, because if you really want to get into the Indian market, and why we get this number, because I know, as we say, we supply roughly 600 to 1,000 Bitcoin every day in India. And most of these is actually going to a lot of traders. And these traders are actually 48, 50, and they buy 50, 60, 80, 100 Bitcoin each day, and I don't know what they do. And I really don't want to know. A reason why, because in India, still the awareness of Bitcoin is only up to a level that Bitcoin is something which makes money, which is something which had made money for a lot of people around the world. But that is not something for us. We have to convert this Bitcoin in something else to become equally rich how Bitcoin have made money to a lot of people outside India. And it's not their fault, because that's the narrative they have been told by the people who are actually pushing and running the actual Bitcoin industry in India. So I don't know what you want to tell them. They are scammers, or they are MLM schemes, or what they are. But their story is fantastic, right? And given the awareness is not there, people are buying that.
Got it. I think this is a good time to kind of bring in one more aspect of Bitcoin, because look, at the end of the day, this was also primarily a technology movement. And this is where I want to bring Prashanth in. You work pretty closely on the Bitcoin blockchain, and I would presume that you are also in the market for talent, and you're building your team out of India. One thing that you see is that as soon as you say blockchain engineering, most of them actually speak about Ethereum and other blockchains that are predominantly popular, and many private blockchains that are predominantly popular from a programming standpoint. How do you see the Bitcoin programming ecosystem in India, the developer ecosystem in India, and why is it not as popular as, say, other kind of blockchains that are constantly being that are constantly positioning themselves as interesting things to build products on?
All right, great. So I think we don't have too much time, but for a quick answer, you're absolutely right. The Indian, like the developer ecosystem is huge. There's a lot of great computer science talent out there, but they're predominantly building upon the Ethereum blockchain or Solidity or JavaScript sort of technologies. But I would say that mostly the amount of developer talent is available for Bitcoin. It is available. Like, we are building a team out of Bangalore, and there are some really talented folks and people that want to learn the technology. But I just think that, like, Bitcoin's marketing team, which doesn't exist, hasn't done the greatest job, honestly. So it's of course more interesting and more lucrative to work for companies that are offering to pay you in their local tokens, or basically it's more lucrative to build on other technologies as opposed to Bitcoin. So most of the time, if you're building on Bitcoin, you're just going to be an open source developer. That's not going to make you too much money. So especially since we work on the Lightning Network pretty much day in, day out, that's something that's even more obscure, and finding talent for it is really hard. So that stems from a place of passion and not for like financial gain.
Yeah, and that's actually a good, sad to say this, but a developer won't adopt a technology unless they know how to make money out of it. The majority of it, but the core that's coming to it are people like you, and I commend you for that, and hope you keep the flag, kind of flying high for it. So we have a few. We are at the last stage of the panel discussion, but what we've learned is two opposing views. The exchanges see young people coming to them, but neobanks such as Darshan and Kumar's BankOfHodlers and Cashaa are seeing much later audience coming in with larger, much older audience that's coming in with larger ticket sizes. Now, all of this can, come to a stop, like what happened a couple of years ago with the RBI, ruling saying that just that the fiat on-ramp with banks onto crypto companies will go for a toss. I want to go end this panel with two questions, primarily, going through, anyone who's kind of interfacing with Bitcoin in India. What do you think now that the RBI has kind of been overturned on this, just the last one point from each of you, what would you suggest? What would you suggest? What would you suggest the RBI do to ensure that we have a thriving Bitcoin ecosystem in India? So first, just like one-line answers. Prashanth, what would you say?
Open up UPI and existing financial services for Bitcoin and crypto companies.
Yes, of course. Darshan?
Closely correspond with startups.
Unfortunately, you're going to be the only person who gets to hop in, because we're going to have to cut to the next segment right after this.
Right, sure. This would be the last question. Yeah, Darshan.
Closely correspond with the
I think you're a bit garbled there, but I presume you said closely correspond with the entrepreneurs. Kumar, one last point.
I think RBI is doing already a great job. We are as a Cashaa, we are already talking to them and working with banks. So the answer to Prashanth and others who having a trouble, they can come to us, talk to us. The government in India have opened up. I don't think the problem is banking anymore in India.
Got it. Sharan?
I think, like most developed countries, we should open up regulatory sandbox environments. So many of the startups could work very closely with the banks and understand what's really allowed and what's not really allowed.
Right. Hemanth?
Yeah, I think I agree with Sharan. I think regulations will only thrive this ecosystem much further down. Until that happens, I think we'll be very rather limited in terms of growth.
Right. And we'll sign off with Gaurav.
Yeah, so I
don't
think
have Gaurav.
Google sort of a KYC would be good. With one click, if someone can log into any specific destination, that's something that's required because the person has to do KYC at 15 different destinations, which is fairly exhausting. So that's from that side where a central regulator can kind of do it.
Got it. So better regulations, and that seems to be the usual. That seems to be the sentiment across the board. Bitcoin Magazine, thank you so much for having us and allowing us to represent India. We are growing, and like everybody truly thinks, this is the next frontier for crypto and Bitcoin. So hope to see you all here soon once the world comes back to normal. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.